Welcome to the channel Reveal Penny USA. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Stay with me on this one, because today we are talking about a coin that sounds almost too wild to believe, a 1996 Washington quarter that, in one incredible hypothetical scenario collectors love to debate, has been talked about as if it could be worth up to $310 million. Now before you run to your coin jar, let me be straight with you. This number is not a confirmed auction record. Nobody has ever sold a quarter for anything close to that. Real rare coin sales top out around $18 to $20 million, even for the most legendary coins in the world. But stick with me, because the story behind why a coin like this could even be imagined at that price is honestly more interesting than the number itself, and by the end of this video, you might look at your spare change completely differently. So let's rewind to 1996. The Denver Mint, that's the D mint mark you'd find on the coin, was cranking out Washington quarters by the millions that year, business as usual, nothing flashy, no anniversary, no special commemorative run. These were everyday coins meant to jingle in your pocket, buy a soda, get lost in a couch cushion. And that's exactly why error coins from ordinary years like 1996 are so fascinating to collectors. Nobody was watching closely for anything unusual, which means if a mistake slipped through the mint's quality control, it could have slipped into circulation completely unnoticed, and possibly still be out there today. Now here's where it gets fun. In the coin collecting world, the wildest prices are almost never about the coin's face value, they're about mistakes. A double die error, where the design gets stamped twice at a slightly different angle, creating a ghostly doubled image on the date or lettering. An off-center strike, where the coin didn't sit right in the press and ended up looking lopsided, almost alien. A wrong planchet error, where a quarter accidentally gets struck on a blank meant for a different coin entirely, maybe even the wrong metal. These are the kinds of flaws that turn a 25-cent coin into something collectors will fight tooth and nail over at auction. And for a 1996 D quarter specifically, if a documented, verifiable error of this kind were ever found and authenticated by a major grading service, it absolutely could command a serious premium. We're talking potentially thousands, in rare cases tens of thousands of dollars for true museum-grade rarities. That 310 million number? Think of that as the ultimate collector fantasy, the kind of number people throw around in forums and videos to capture just how obsessed this hobby can make people, not a real sale price you'll find in any auction house ledger. Why does this matter to you? Because most people have zero idea what's sitting in their spare change right now. You might have handled a dozen 1996 D quarters in your life and tossed every single one into a vending machine without a second glance. Collectors call this coin roll hunting, going through bank rolls of ordinary coins, quarter by quarter, hunting for that one anomaly that got missed. It's part treasure hunt, part detective work, and every single year people post videos of coins they found in normal circulation that turned out to be worth real, documented money, not fantasy numbers, but genuine, life-changing amounts for the right error on the right coin. The psychology here is simple: rarity plus mistake plus timing equals value, and the mint has made billions of quarters, which means even a 1 in a million error still means there could be hundreds of them scattered out there in jars, drawers, and cash registers across the country. So here's your takeaway from this one: don't expect to find a $310 million quarter. That number is a hook, not a fact, and I want you walking away from this channel smarter, not misled. But start paying attention. Check your quarters for doubling on the lettering, check for a strike that looks off-center or warped, check the mint mark, check the date. Because while this exact coin's astronomical price is fiction, the broader world of quarter errors is very real, and real people have found real money this way. And honestly, that's what makes this hobby so addictive. You genuinely never know what's going to turn up next. And speaking of never knowing what's coming next, the next coin on our list today is a 1990p Washington quarter, and let me just say, the story behind this one takes things to an even more jaw-dropping level. I'm not giving you the number yet, you're going to want to stick around for that. Because if you thought a 1996 quarter could spark this much obsession, wait until you hear what collectors have said about this next one. Stay with me. this next one might just be sitting in your house right now without you even knowing it. Next, 1990p Washington quarter. Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion. Now hold on, before your imagination runs wild, let me be honest with you the same way I was in the last video, because that's how this channel works. We hype the story, but we never lie to you about the facts. The number you may have heard tossed around for this coin, $335 million, is not a real, documented, verified auction sale. No coin in recorded history, not a single one, has ever sold for anywhere close to that. The actual world record for any coin ever sold sits around $18 to $20 million, held by legendary pieces like the 1933 Double Eagle gold coin. So think of that 335 million number as a symbol, a way of capturing just how obsessed, how desperate, how emotional collectors can get over the right coin at the right moment, not a receipt. And now that we've cleared that up, let's get into why the 1990p Washington quarter has quietly become one of the most talked about coins among people who hunt through rolls of change looking for their next big score. Let's set the scene. 1990, the Philadelphia Mint, that's what the P Mint mark stands for, was operating at full tilt, churning out hundreds of millions of quarters that year alone, business as usual, no anniversary, no redesign, nothing that would make anyone think twice. And that, my friend, is exactly the kind of environment where a mistake can slip through completely unnoticed. Think about it this way, when the Mint is producing something special, a commemorative, a limited run, everybody is watching closely, quality control is tight, every die is inspected, every strike is checked. But in a normal production year, on a normal denomination, working at a breakneck industrial pace, dies wear down, presses misalign, planchets get fed incorrectly, and errors happen, small ones, mostly invisible to the naked eye, but errors nonetheless. And once one of those flawed coins leaves the Mint and enters circulation, it becomes a needle in a haystack of hundreds of millions of nearly identical needles, just waiting for the right person, with the right eye, to notice something is off. So what kind of errors are we talking about here? Let's break it down, because this is where the real fascination of this hobby lives. First, there's the double die error. This happens during the die-making process itself, when the hub that stamps the design into the die shifts slightly between impressions, leaving a ghostly, shadowy doubling on the lettering, the date, or Washington's profile. It's subtle, sometimes you need a magnifying glass to catch it, but once you see it, you can't unsee it, and collectors go absolutely wild for a clean, well-documented double die. Second, there's the off-center strike. This happens when the planchet, the blank metal disc that becomes a coin, doesn't sit perfectly centered in the press when it gets struck, resulting in a coin where the design is shifted to one side, sometimes so dramatically that part of the coin is completely blank. The more dramatic the off-center strike, collectors often talk about the 10 to 90% range, the more valuable it tends to be, with strikes near 50%, where you can still identify the coin's date and design, often being the most desirable of all. Third, there's the clipped planchet. This happens when the machine that punches blank discs out of a sheet of metal overlaps a previous punch, resulting in a coin with a curved chunk missing from the edge, almost like someone took a bite out of it. Fourth, there's the wrong planchet error, arguably the most dramatic of all, where a quarter design accidentally gets struck onto a blank meant for an entirely different coin, maybe a dime planchet, maybe even a foreign coin blank that got mixed into the wrong bin, resulting in a coin that's the wrong size, the wrong weight, sometimes even the wrong color entirely. And fifth, there's the broad strike, where the collar that's supposed to keep the coin's edge contained during striking fails, causing the coin to spread out wider and flatter than it should be, giving it a strange, almost melted appearance. Now here's the part that really gets people's hearts racing. These errors are not just theoretical, they are documented, they happen, and they get discovered in ordinary places by ordinary people all the time. This is where the practice of coin roll hunting comes in, and if you've never heard of it, let me explain, because it might just change how you look at your spare change forever. Coin roll hunting is exactly what it sounds like. Collectors go to their local bank, request rolls of quarters, dimes, whatever denomination they're hunting that week, and they sit down at their kitchen table and go through every single coin, one by one, checking dates, checking mint marks, checking for doubling, checking for anything that looks even slightly unusual. It sounds tedious, and honestly, it kind of is, but that's exactly the appeal. It's like a treasure hunt you can do from your living room, and every single roll holds the possibility, however small, of containing something special. People have built entire YouTube channels around this hobby, filming themselves cracking open roll after roll after roll, and every once in a while, someone finds something real, a genuine error coin, a coin from an unusually early year still somehow in circulation, a coin in surprisingly pristine condition despite decades of handling. And when that happens, when someone posts a video of the moment they realize they're holding something special, the reaction is priceless, the gasp, the disbelief, the immediate scramble to look up grading services. And that brings us to grading, because finding a potential error coin is only half the battle, the other half is proving it. This is where companies like PCGS, the Professional Coin Grading Service, and NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Company, come into play. These are third-party organizations that collectors trust to authenticate a coin, confirm whether an error is genuine or just damage from wear and tear, and assign it a grade based on its condition, using a scale that runs up to 70 for an absolutely flawless, mint-state coin. A coin that comes back from grading with a confirmed, documented error, especially one in high grade, suddenly has a paper trail, a certification, something a serious collector can trust and bid on with confidence. Without that certification, even a coin that looks unusual is just a curiosity. With it, that same coin can transform into something a collector is willing to pay real, serious money for, because now there's no doubt about what they're getting. Let's talk about why collectors get so emotionally invested in coins like this, because honestly, it's not just about the money, even though the money is obviously a huge draw. There's something deeply human about the idea of finding value where nobody else thought to look. Think about it, a quarter is about as ordinary as money gets. It's the coin you use for laundry, for parking meters, for vending machines. It has almost no perceived value beyond 25 cents in the mind of the average person. And yet, hidden within that ordinary object, there's the possibility of something extraordinary, something that connects back to a specific mint, a specific year, a specific moment in an industrial process that happened over 3 decades ago. Collectors aren't just chasing money, they're chasing a connection to history, a tangible piece of a moment that most people walked right past without a second thought. And there's also the thrill of the hunt itself, the dopamine hit of flipping through coin after coin, mostly finding nothing special, and then suddenly seeing something that makes you stop and look twice. That feeling is addictive, and it's why this hobby has stayed alive and even grown in the age of the internet, where communities of collectors share tips, post their finds, and help each other identify potential treasures. Now let's talk about real numbers, because I promised you honesty on this channel and I intend to keep that promise. Genuine, documented error coins from common years like 1990 can realistically sell anywhere from a modest premium of maybe $20 or $30 over face value for minor, common errors, all the way up to several $1,000s for major, dramatic, well-documented errors in high grade. Think off-center strikes, major double dies, or wrong planchet errors that have been certified by PCGS or NGC. In truly exceptional cases, where an error is extremely rare, extremely dramatic, and in near-perfect condition, prices can climb into the tens of thousands of dollars range at specialized auctions. That's the real ceiling for a coin like this, not $335 million, but potentially still a genuinely life-changing amount of money for the right combination of luck and knowledge. And honestly, that real number is still exciting, it's still a story worth telling, because it means the treasure hunt is real, even if the fantasy number isn't. So here's what I want you to walk away with from this one. Go check your quarters, specifically look for anything from 1990 with a P mint mark, look closely at the date and the lettering for any sign of doubling, check the edges for anything that looks clipped or irregular, and if you ever come across a quarter that looks strikingly off-center or oddly shaped, do not spend it. Set it aside and look into getting it authenticated. Because while the astronomical number that gets people clicking on videos like this one is fiction, the underlying world of coin errors, coin roll hunting, and genuine numismatic discovery is completely real, and it's happening right now, in banks and kitchens and coin shops all across the country. And if you thought this coin story was fascinating, you are absolutely not ready for what's coming next, because our final coin today is a 1989 D Washington quarter, and the story behind this one, the way collectors talk about it, the legend that's built up around it, takes everything we've just discussed to another level entirely. I'm not giving you a single detail yet, no history, no error type, nothing. You're going to have to stick around for that, because this next one might be the most unbelievable story on this entire channel, and trust me, you do not want to miss it. Next, 1989 D Washington quarter. Some coins buy you groceries, this one could buy you a mansion. And this is it, the grand finale, the coin we've been building toward this entire video, the one collectors whisper about like it's some kind of legend. And just like before, let me give you the truth up front, because that's the whole point of this channel. The number floating around for this coin, $211 million, is not a documented sale, it is not a verified auction record, no coin anywhere, ever, has sold for that kind of money. The real-world record for any coin sale sits around $18 to $20 million for the most legendary pieces in numismatic history. So hold that number loosely, think of it as the emotional ceiling of what collectors imagine when they fantasize about the ultimate find, not a receipt you'll ever see from heritage auctions or Stack's Bowers. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's dig into the real story of the 1989 D Washington quarter, because even without the fantasy number, this coin has a genuinely fascinating history behind it. 1989, the Denver Mint, marked by that little D you'll find just below Washington's ponytail on the reverse side near the eagle, was in full production mode, cranking out hundreds of millions of quarters that year as part of the ongoing, decades-long run of the Washington quarter design that had been in continuous production since 1932, with the copper nickel-clad composition we still use today having been introduced back in 1965 after silver was phased out of circulating coinage. By 1989, quarter production was a well-oiled machine, but well-oiled machine doesn't mean perfect machine. Mints are still industrial operations, running dies that wear down over tens of thousands of strikes, presses that can shift out of alignment, and blank cutting machines that occasionally overlap and produce irregular shapes. Every single one of these mechanical realities creates the possibility of error coins slipping through, and 1989 was no exception. Let's talk about what actually makes a coin from a year like 1989 special, because the story here is really about probability and patience more than anything else. By this point in production, the Denver Mint had been striking Washington quarters using the same basic design for over half a century, meaning the dies used to strike these coins had been through countless revisions, countless replacements, and countless opportunities for small errors to creep into individual die pairs. One of the most sought-after types of errors from this era is the repunched mint mark. This happens when the mint mark itself, which back then was punched into the die by hand rather than being part of the master hub, gets punched more than once, at a very slightly different angle or position, leaving a doubled or shifted D that's visible under magnification. These repunched mint mark varieties have their own dedicated following of collectors, with specialized reference books cataloging different varieties by year and mint, and certain rare, well-documented repunched mint marks can command real premiums at auction, sometimes hundreds of dollars, occasionally more for exceptionally dramatic examples in high grade. Beyond repunched mint marks, we're also talking about the same broad family of errors we discussed with the earlier coins in this series, doubled dies, where the design doubles due to a hub misalignment during die creation, off-center strikes, where the coin gets struck outside the collar and ends up shifted dramatically to one side, clipped planchets, where the blank cutting process overlaps and leaves a curved bite taken out of the coin's edge, and the rarest of all, wrong planchet errors, where a quarter design somehow gets stamped onto a blank intended for a completely different coin. And here's something that makes 1989 specifically interesting. This was still an era before mints had the kind of advanced automated quality control and error detection technology that exists today, meaning a higher percentage of flawed coins from this period had the opportunity to slip past inspection and enter general circulation compared to more recent years. That's not a guarantee of more errors, but it does mean that coins from the late 1980s occupy a kind of sweet spot for collectors, old enough that errors had real opportunities to escape into circulation, but recent enough that a surprising number of them are still out there, sitting in old coin jars, forgotten collections, and yes, occasionally still turning up in circulation even decades later. Now let's talk storytelling for a moment, because this is where the emotional core of coin collecting really lives. Imagine an elderly relative who worked a cash register throughout the late 1980s and early 1990s, someone who had a habit, like so many people did back then, of setting aside interesting-looking coins in an old cigar box or a mason jar, not because they knew anything about numismatics, but just because something about a particular coin caught their eye. Maybe it looked a little different, maybe the date seemed odd, maybe it just felt heavier or lighter than it should. That jar sits untouched for 30, 35 years, forgotten in the back of a closet or a garage, and then one day, during a move, or a clean-out, or settling an estate, someone finally opens it up and decides to actually look through what's inside. This is not a hypothetical scenario dreamed up for a YouTube script. This is, quite literally, how a huge percentage of significant coin finds actually happen in the real world. People are not typically finding these coins by carefully hunting through fresh bank rolls, although that does happen too. They are finding them in inherited collections, in old change jars, in coffee cans buried in attics, because for most of history, the average person had no idea that the ordinary pocket change from decades ago could ever be worth more than face value, so they just kept it, out of habit, out of superstition, out of simple human pack rat instinct, never imagining it could someday be worth investigating. Let's talk about the emotional and psychological side of why collectors chase coins like this 1989 D-quarter so intensely, because I think this is honestly the most interesting part of the whole hobby. Numismatics, the formal study and collection of currency, sits at this fascinating intersection of history, art, mathematics, and pure human psychology. On one level, you have the historical dimension. Every coin is a physical artifact from a specific moment in time, minted under a specific administration, using specific technology, reflecting specific economic conditions. Holding a 1989 D-quarter connects you, in a small but tangible way, to that exact year, the tail end of the Cold War, the final months of the Reagan era transitioning into the Bush administration, a specific slice of American history you can literally hold in your hand. On another level, you have the mathematical, almost gambling-like appeal of probability. With literally hundreds of millions of quarters minted in a single year, the odds of any individual coin being special are astronomically low, and yet, because so many coins exist, the absolute number of error coins out there, even at a tiny percentage rate, can still be substantial. It's the same psychology that drives lottery ticket sales. The individual odds don't matter nearly as much as the sheer, visceral possibility that this coin, the one in your hand right now, could be the one. And then there's the community aspect, which I think doesn't get talked about enough. Coin collecting, especially in the internet era, has become a deeply social hobby. There are forums with tens of thousands of active members dedicated entirely to identifying and discussing potential error coins, Facebook groups where people post photos asking, "Is this worth anything?" YouTube channels, like this one, built entirely around education and entertainment related to rare coin discovery, and in-person coin shows and shops where collectors gather to trade, buy, sell, and simply talk about their latest finds. This community aspect transforms coin collecting from a solitary hobby into something closer to a shared cultural experience, complete with its own inside jokes, its own legendary stories that get passed around and slightly exaggerated with each retelling, which, frankly, is exactly how numbers like $211 million end up attached to a coin like the 1989 D-quarter in the first place, not through any actual sale, but through the natural human tendency to embellish a good story until it becomes legend. So let's ground ourselves back in reality for a moment, because I promised you facts, not just excitement. What would a genuinely rare, genuinely documented 1989 D Washington quarter error actually be worth in the real world? For a minor, common variety, think a subtle repunched mint mark or a very light doubling, you might be looking at somewhere between $10 and $50 over face value, which honestly is still a fantastic return on a 25-cent coin. For a moderate, well-documented error in strong condition, a clear off-center strike, a dramatic clipped planchet, a strongly doubled die, certified by PCGS or NGC, you could realistically see prices ranging from a couple $100s up to a few $1,000s, depending on exactly how dramatic and rare the specific error is. And for the absolute rarest possibility, a genuine, authenticated wrong planchet error, where the coin was struck on a completely incorrect blank, especially if it's in exceptional, nearly untouched condition, you could be looking at prices climbing into the tens of thousands of dollars at a major specialized auction house. That's the real ceiling, and honestly, tens of thousands of dollars for a coin you might have received as change at a gas station is still an absolutely incredible, life-changing story, even without adding 8 extra zeros to make it sound more dramatic. So here's my final challenge to you, now that we've gone through all three of these coins together, the 1996D, the 1990P, and this 1989D Washington quarter. Go check your change. Go check that old jar sitting in your closet, that cigar box your grandfather left behind, that coffee can nobody's opened in 15 years. Look at the dates, look at the mint marks, look closely at the lettering for any sign of doubling, check the edges for anything that looks clipped or irregular, and if anything looks even slightly unusual, don't spend it, don't melt it down, don't ignore it, set it aside and look into getting it properly authenticated by a reputable grading service. Because here's the truth this entire video has been building toward, you are never going to find a $211 million quarter, that number was never real, and I'm not going to insult your intelligence by pretending otherwise. But what you might find, sitting completely unnoticed in plain sight, is something genuinely, legitimately valuable, a piece of minting history worth real money, attached to a real story, one that started with a mistake at a mint decades ago and ended with you, sitting at your kitchen table, holding something that almost nobody else on earth would have thought twice about. That's not a fantasy. That's numismatics. And that's exactly why this hobby has captured the imagination of millions of people for generations, and honestly, it's exactly why I keep making videos about it. If this one got you curious, go check your coins, and let me know in the comments what you find, you might just surprise yourself.